everyone, Lucamus Prime here. So it is time for the next episode of Movie That Didn't Need a Sequel. And in today's video, guys, I'm going to cover this time an example of a supernatural comedy horror movie, which in my opinion did not need the sequels that it got and was best being on its own as a standalone movie. This film is also as well one of my favourite films by the director Joel Schumacher, may he rest in peace. And this is also a film, of course, which involves vampires. And if you've seen this film, you'll probably be what I'm talking about, because today's video is going to cover why, in my opinion, The Lost Boys from 1987 and did not need sequels. So, you guys are going to be asking me, what do I think of The Lost Boys? Well, this is one of my favourite horror films of all time. One of my favourite horror films of vampires of all time as well. I think it's an example of a horror movie masterpiece, and it's also one of my favourite 80s films as well too. And it really has that amazing 80s feel to it, which a lot of 80s films have. Like, I mean, for example, a great story and great characters, and I must also as well say great music as well, which I definitely really love to listen to. Because I definitely think that there were so many great songs in this, which were so great to listen to. For example, as well, the theme song, Cry Little Sister, I love that song. And I think it was done really well in this, sang and as well, of course, by Gerard McMahon, which was definitely done really well. And I definitely really love that. And I think as well, the story is also great too. And the main reason why I personally think this film did not need sequels is, of course, we get a pretty cool plot twist, and it's revealed, of course, that the head of the vampires is none other than Max, who, of course, is the guy who's on a date with Lucy Emerson, who, of course, is a mother of Michael and Sam, the two main characters. And he explains he instructed, of course, the film's main villain, David, to turn Sam and Michael into vampires so that Lucy could not refuse to be transformed herself, because he wanted to make Lucy mother for his lost boys. And as he pulls Lucy to him to transform her, however, the character Grandpa crashes his truck through a wall of the house, which impales Max on a wooden fence, and it causes him to explode. And then, of course, those who, of course, were transforming turn to normal. And we get a pretty cool ending line, of course, where they of course, check if Grandpa's okay, and he replies, "One thing about living in Santa Clara, I could never stomach, all the damn vampires." And right there, I did not see any signs of sequel baiting whatsoever, because all of the film's villains, especially, of course, probably, in my opinion, the best villain of the film, of course, which is David, played, of course, by the legendary Kiefer Sutherland. Definitely, in my opinion, one of his best roles, and a pretty scary villain, I must say. And Max also defeated as well, played by Edward Herrmann, may he rest in peace as well. And I must also as well say that they did a really great job with it. We're giving a badass line at the end, and no sequel baiting whatsoever, because it gave a happy ending for the characters, the villains were defeated, and there was no setups whatsoever. However, unfortunately, despite this, we then, of course, got 2 sequels, unfortunately. And the first one was, of course, released in 2008, which I must say is a pretty late release date, considering it was, what is it, like 21 years after the first movie. And that, of course, was none other than Lost Boys, The Tribe, which I personally think is absolutely terrible. Because compared to the horror movie masterpiece, which is the first Lost Boys movie, I absolutely despise The Tribe. The Tribe is, in my opinion, one of the worst horror sequels I've ever seen in my life, and one of the worst sequels I've ever seen in my life in general. So what it does, which I think is so stupid, is that, of course, like, it brings back the vampires, even though they're all clearly defeated in the first movie. And in my opinion, the only good thing about this film, as far as I'm concerned, was, of course, the return of Corey Feldman as his character from the first movie, Edgar Frog. In my opinion, he was the best part of this movie, the only part that I enjoyed watching. Corey Feldman is a great actor, and I consider Edgar Frog to be one of his best roles. And in my opinion, he was the only redeeming quality of this trash. Other than that, though, this film absolutely sucked, in my opinion, because it brought about vampires. And I must also say, despite this film featuring the vampires, there's barely any dealings with vampires to begin with, because it feels more like a pretty bad comedy than a vampire film, which I think was just so stupid. It didn't feel like a horror movie whatsoever for the most part. It also got really boring too as well. And I also, though, did not care in the slightest for any of the main characters in the film either, because compared to the Emerson characters, who I loved in the first movie, I personally did not like the characters in this whatsoever. Because in my opinion, they were very annoying. I just couldn't stand them. Like, no Michael or Sam anymore. I know that Sam, of course, appears in the credits, apparently, who is, of course, not a vampire. Yeah. And there's, like, also as well, another crazy where he is a vampire. So, like, oh, what is going on with these credits? I have no idea. So, yeah, I definitely think those credits are an example of why this film sucks, because it can't decide what ending it wants to have. And it has all these different endings which just make no sense. So, all I can say is that this film absolutely sucks. And also, you guys are probably going to ask me, where's Edgar's brother Alan in this film? Well, it turns out he only appears in deleted scenes, in like an alternate ending. So, like, great. How could you cut him out of this? You get Jameson Newlander back for to play Alan, but not for the whole film alongside Edgar. Like, come on. It doesn't even help us over Edgar himself. Doesn't really hear much of the film either, because even though I thought Corey Feldman was the best part of this sequel, I personally hated how he didn't really have much screen time in the film to begin with, which really disappointed me a lot because of how much I loved his character in the first movie. I was really appalled by that. So while I give the first film a full-blown 10 out of 10, I give this absolutely dreadful sequel a very bad score of 1 out of 10, because in my opinion it absolutely sucks and had no reason to exist to begin with, because I think The Lost Boys had a perfect ending with no sequel baiting whatsoever. Then, however, 2 years later, we got another sequel. And that, of course, was, which I also have in this freeform collection, Lost Boys the First. Now, what I will say is, it may not have been as abominable, in my opinion, as The Tribe. I'll definitely say that. But it's still, in my opinion, not a good movie by any means, because it unfortunately got pretty boring once again, and I was not a fan of it. The pacing, in my opinion, was very slow at times. And just like the second film, there was not much dealings with vampires to begin with. But I will say, though, for what it was worth it, Corey Feldman was one thing, the best part of it. And also, so Alan does come back as well, which I guess I was happy about. So, at least on the second film, he does appear, thankfully, alongside Edgar. So, I was happy that Alan came back. But other than that, though, I still think this film was not good. And even as well end on a pretty dumb ending with a sequel note, in which, of course, the character Zoe is becoming a werewolf now. So, like, oh, just give me a break with all these sequel setups, please. But thankfully, however, despite this ending, which appears to set something up with a werewolf, there was thankfully no fourth film made. So, thank goodness for that. Because I personally think these two sequels have done so much damage to the first movie. And I like to pretend, of course, that The Lost Boys stayed on its own. We are, of course, getting a reboot coming for some reason. But I'm personally not interested in this reboot at all, really. I don't think it's going to work, to be honest. I'm probably going to stick to the original film. So as far as I'm concerned, guys, with regards to a Lost Boy franchise, there can only be one Lost Boys movie. Just one. When it comes to what I own, I of course do own this Blu-ray collection of a trilogy of the Lost Boys here. And if you're wondering why I got this despite me not liking the sequels, it's because it's the only way I could get the first movie. Because sadly, I couldn't find the film on its own at HMV at the time. So I was forced to, unfortunately, of course, get a trilogy. And that's why I was able to, of course, watch the sequels for this video. And I personally didn't like them, especially the second one. One day I will definitely post a positive review for the first movie and show pure love for it, absolutely. Because I think it's a great film with great characters and great direction by Joel Schumacher, rest in peace. And a great lead, of course, being Sam Emerson, played by Corey Haim, rest in peace, who we lost way too soon. And I will, however, give trash talk to a second movie, because I think it deserves all hate that it gets. And as for the third film, I'll probably give it a mediocre mess review, because for me it's like a 5 out of 10. I mean, I give a second film a 1 out of 10 garbage score, because I think it's trash. But a third film, I'll probably give a 5 out of 10 too, because I think it's mediocre, but still not good in my opinion. So that's what I do for reviews for them in the future. And then once I've done more reviews for the sequels, I'm not going to watch them again. I don't see any point why I should. So guys, this is me covering why, in my opinion, The Lost Boys for 1987 is a strong example in the horror movie territory of the film did not need sequels. So, you know the drill, guys. Be sure to give this video a like. Also, be sure to comment in the comments what you guys think of The Lost Boys. Do you need sequels on it, or comments below what you think. Also, be sure to join Team Prime by pressing subscribe to come in the future. And I'll see you all later.